Hello, Yijao Martins, licensed marriage and family therapist, couple therapist. We'll continue with our conversation on the fighting styles. So today we are going to talk about number 4, the fighting style. It's called the mirroring fighters. Well, that's what it looks like. Mirror. So one partner will mirror the other partner's tone of voice, sometimes even words in fights, facial expression, pitch and volume, and energy level, anger, aggression, frustration, right? And the other person can tend to mirror back, so they go back and forth. They tend to get into a yelling match. So we are still going to go over this fighting style from attachment, arousal, regulation, a couple dynamics, and then I will give a live example in the end. All right. So for this kind of fighting partners called the mirroring fighters, they tend to be, the majority of them are more leaning to the preoccupied, anxious attachment style, or sometimes mixed with someone who has disorganized attachment style. So if you have been following me and you've been listening to the past couple podcasts, you probably know this. The preoccupied, anxious attachment partner tend to seek contact. They want to be regulated. And when they're in conflict, they're the one they tend to pursue. They want to resolve the issue. Don't let the fight stay overnight and, don't sleep over it. Let's resolve it before we go to bed. They are more driven to resolve the conflicts. And because they tend to feel more comfortable with similarities instead of differences in relationships, when their partner has a huge difference from them, they tend to be very distressed. And they really want to persuade the other person to agree with them so they're on the same page, meaning they're the same, which it's not possible, right? Human beings are all different and we all have our differences, and a part of being in a relationship is to integrate those differences. So when the couples are fighting, the preoccupied, anxious partners tend to want to resolve the conflict. When they're not heard, guess what? Their volume goes up, right? And they just really want the other person to hear them, see them, understand them, and to agree with them. So sometimes it mixed with another partner that with more disorganized attachment style. So disorganized partners, how I look at it is they have a part of them that's actually pursuing. The other part of them is preoccupied, withdrawing, like avoiding. So sometimes those two parts are fighting, and sometimes one part dominates the other part. The other time the other part dominates. But they're in a little bit unpredictable in a way that if their more anxious part get involved in there, they could be really volume matching, trying to volume and power up the other partner, anxious partner. So you will see them will be very eyes locked, frustrated, fight it out, kind of dramatic, right? Well, when the part that's more avoidant takes over, they actually get really dysregulated by this volume and volatility. So they will say something and push back and get really big and increase the volume and intensity to push back the partner so they will stop fighting with them. So that's a strategy to run away. But either way, you will hear when this kind of partner, the mirroring fighters or your neighbors or your friends, when they're in session, you can hear them. There's no doubt about it. So, and you can imagine arousal level is a hyper aroused. They are burnt out until they're exhausted from their sympathetic nervous system overactivation, right? So, and they tend to try to co-regulate by staying in the fight. It doesn't make sense when you just at first sight. It's like, why are they co-regulating each other to stay in the fight? Well, that's how they know how to have contact with each other. So they need to stay in this level of fight, and they're hyper aroused, so they feel connected. But they're regulating in a way they're both up-regulating each other. climbing the ladders, and then there's no down regulation at all. You can imagine the dynamics in these couples, right? We also call them the hostile dependent couple. They're really dependency in there. They cannot leave each other's fight, and they're so hostile towards each other. And I would like, actually, if any of your viewers, any friends who are in the medical neuroscience field are interested to do some testing to collect some data from those couples, I have a prediction. The heart condition rate for those couples, partners, much higher, because they're constantly hyperarousal. There's no downregulation. And if you live with someone, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your body temperature keeps rising up without dropping to the relaxation state, and you're always in this heated place, our body will burn out eventually, right? So physically, emotionally, is not that great for your health, in my opinion. I don't have data to collect to support this, but based on my observation, you can give me more data if you have it. But that's my prediction. So now let me give you a live example. Well, I know many hostile dependent couples, it tend to be one of my specialties because I have the tolerance for it. But I want to actually talk about a parent-child case, because I start to think about how this got developed. How are we wired in the way that we are seeking that high level of distress in relationships, and we cannot leave that it almost become obsessive and addictive in a way that to need that level of stimulation for connection and don't know any other way. So I have my neighbors, a parent, a child, actually a family. I often hear the mother and the 3-year-old yelling at each other, have yelling matches. I don't know what they're talking about. It's in a different language. But I get energy. It's a lot of frustration, and you can hear the level. Start with the child whining and whimpering and complaining, and then the mother yelling, raise the voice at them, and then the child get escalated, start to even like surpass the mother's voice and volume, and then the mother trying to power down with larger, louder, high-pitched voice. So you just keep climbing the ladders until the child end up crying, and then silence. I figure they probably fall asleep, and that happens before nighttime and in the evening before bedtime. So the child will escalate to the point until exhaustion and then crash. That is the way go to dorsal, right? So instead of soothing the nervous system to higher arousal level to lower arousal, calm down the body to fall asleep, the child learns, this is how I fall asleep. I burn and crash. And if that is a habitual way they learned, and I can imagine down the road, they are likely to repeat that in their relationships and how they exhaust themselves to fall asleep instead of soothe themselves to sleep. So I don't know every single partner in this dynamics, their childhood, and it's no way for me to know. But if you belong to the fighting the mirror fighters, maybe you can reflect back on your childhood. What was it like for you to soothe yourself? What was it like for you to resolve conflict in your family? And what are you observing? What you're used to? What's comfortable for you that you feel this is the way, even though it start to torture you as you get older, but this is how you learn. This is what you know. This is familiar, and there's such a neural pathway that's been carved in your brain that is so strong that it's really hard to deviate from it. So when I see couples like that, and I often raise the question of their health, and then ask them, especially they're older, I ask, how's your heart? How's your blood pressure? If you're injured, how are you recovering from your injury? How's your sleep? And if you're a woman, how's your cycle? And is that impacting you, this dynamic? Is it sustainable, right? If for any other fighting styles, I haven't been giving advice, but for this fighting styles, if you're watching it, I invite you to pause. If you're in the midst of that yelling match, I invite you to pause and ask for a stop to, like, I need to take a break from this. and then remove yourself from the situation, do some self-regulating, either drinking some tea, take a walk, touch your pet, or look at, if you have plants at home, anything to help you going down a little bit to your central nervous system, to the calm and relaxed centered state. So your body and your nervous system can take a break before you can further discuss your differences and your conflict with your partner. So that's number 4, the mirror fighters. We'll see you next week for more fighting styles. Bye.